Brains. Brains. That's all I got. Sorry about that. Actually, that's zombie for good morning, good evening, how you doing? You're going to eat that. It's sort of an all-purpose word. It's not a terribly capacious vocabulary. But what I meant to say is that this is, in fact, a talk about zombies. And we might as well get out of the way the fact that I realize that most TEDx talks take up topics that are a little more recognizably profound. But it was actually right here at Century College, not that long ago, that I was reminded that sometimes the most profound things can be found in the least obvious places. It was here where I came in contact with Parker Palmer's touchstones. And one of them tells us that when in doubt, we need to teach ourselves to turn to wonder instead of turning to judgment. So instead of saying, why would anybody want to take zombies seriously, you could say, why not? And ask probing questions and see where you go. Really, turning to wonder is an awful lot like asking, why not? Why not take zombies seriously? Why not think of zombie films and graphic novels and games as cultural artifacts and examine them through the lenses of anthropology and psychology and sociology and human history and see where that takes you? Why not ask probing questions about zombies? You know, like why? Like why the exponential growth in zombie films and games and everything else? Over $6 billion to date. Questions like how? How has the representations of zombies changed over time? They used to be slow and shambling, and then all of a sudden they got really, really fast. When did that happen? What does it mean? If you're being chased, you know what it means, but it could mean something more. And maybe should have started with the more fundamental question, like, what's the deal with zombies anyway? Like, what's the appeal? It's pretty remarkable that the zombie horror franchise has now overtaken the vampire franchise. This is perplexing because vampires are way sexier than zombies. What does that mean? And then as long as we're at it, let's talk about 80 years of zombie films, 80 years. Probing questions have to be asked, like, what is Zombies on Broadway about? What's the appeal of that? Or American Lincoln versus Zombies, or the mysteriously redundant cannibal zombie, or the immoderate Bong of the Dead, or the moderately disturbing Zombievers. I'm just saying that there are questions that need to be asked. And it's true, it's undeniably true that we can learn a lot from Academy Award-winning films. A good friend recently took me aside and informed me that zombies are not real. To which I thought neither was Hamlet or Holden Caulfield or Sherlock Holmes. What does that tell us? That's just a starting point for figuring out if something means anything. There's a scholar, I'll call him a zombie scholar, Dr. Todd Platts, who refuses to dismiss B-movies or zombie movies. In fact, he says they have a lot to teach us about ourselves. And in one of his wonderful, lengthy academic essays, there's one sentence that to me says it all. He says, there's a lot we can learn about a culture by understanding how it scares itself. Zombies are sometimes not the walk-on characters. Sometimes they're carrying a message. Sometimes they're reflecting the culture that produced them. And sometimes we can learn about ourselves by understanding them better. Annalee Newitz takes this a little bit further. She actually mapped out the production of zombie movies over time. And she found that zombie movies tended to be produced during times of social upheaval. So during the Great Depression, there were a few zombie movies. Even more during the Vietnam War and the racial tension during the late 60s. Even more during the emergence of the HIV/AIDS crisis. And a whole lot more with 9/11 and the wars on terror. So let's take a quick tour and look at a couple of zombie films. And let me give you a taste. Sorry. Let me give you some examples of how some of these insights can be borne out if you ask probing questions. White Zombie is the first zombie movie, 1932. Who's seen it? I thought so. That's because it's almost unwatchably dated. It is slow-moving even by zombie standards, let's say. Even when it tries to be titillating, it's really pretty dull. White Zombie, 1932. What could that mean? It's about zombies, sure. But if you start to look into the setting of the movie, it's set in Haiti, which is the origin of zombies. And Amy Willence in the New York Times writes about that, and she talks about the history of Haiti. And here's a country that was ravaged by a brutal dictatorship. People were forced into essentially slavery to work in the mills and the plantations. Life was so hard and starvation was so prevalent that death was to be wished for. And now you see the horror of zombieism because you can't even die. Even death is taken from you. And that's exactly what you have in the movie White Zombie. Here's a shot from the movie. They're not eating brains. They're working the mill. They're essentially economic slaves. In the New York Times article, she says they're the eternally exploited worker. They can't file a grievance. They can't ask for more pay. They're dead. So now there's these two really meaningful understandings to be gained from this movie from 1932. One is to understand it in the historical, cultural context of Haiti. The other is to remember, when was this movie done again? 1932? What was happening here at that time? 1932 was the worst year of the American Depression, the first Great Depression. The worst year. 1932 was also the year that saw the most hunger marches in this country. In Detroit, March of 1932, police opened fire on 2,000 hunger marchers and killed a bunch of them. And the city prosecutor the next day said, I wish I'd have killed a few more of those damn rioters. What is it about rioters and mobs and hordes that's so terrifying for us? It's almost part of our collective unconscious as Americans to be afraid of those things. The menacingness, the violence, the collective fear. You know, you think about it, it really is the collectiveness of it that's terrifying. One zombie's not a problem. One rioter's not a problem. 5, 10, 20, 200, 2,000, that's when things get tricky. So in 1930, you have workers demanding food. If you'll follow me down the rabbit hole, a decade later, you had another horde emerge on another continent with a level of horror that we're still, frankly, trying to comprehend. So zombies aren't real? Really? Is this too much of a stretch? Have I just watched too many zombie movies? Maybe. It's interesting, in Annalee Newitz's charting out of zombie movies, there is not a spike of zombie movies during World War II. What does that mean? Maybe it was too personal. Maybe it was too real to be made into entertainment. Who knows? But until you ask questions, you never know. The other great, great classic zombie movie is 1968, Night of the Living Dead. This is a fantastic movie. And it also has all of the hallmarks of zombie movies really from then till today. The apocalypse linked to technology, the strong hero who leads a ragtag group of survivors to safety. It has the false leader who leads a bunch of people to certain doom. And it also has the feature of almost every horror movie, it seems, the unbelievably silly and shrieking and hysterical female character. This is Barbara. This is pretty much her through the entire movie. She finally quiets down when she's undead, so there's that. But wait a minute, who's the hero of this film? The hero of the film is Dwayne Jones, an unknown African-American stage actor. In 1968, one of the periods of the greatest racial tension in America, Dwayne Jones playing the part of Ben. He's the hero. He's the guy leading a ragtag group of white folks into the farmhouse to safety. He's the guy who says, almost as a prophet of his age, we can get out of this thing if we'll just work together. How does it end? Well, it doesn't work out so well for Ben. The zombies sort of peter out, nothing really happens. They bring a bunch of troops in and they just start shooting them and the zombie threat is gone. But what happens is the police and some sort of vigilantes are there with guns and they come up to the farmhouse where Ben and his friends are. They see Ben up in the window. They think he's a zombie, or do they? And they shoot him and Ben's dead, and that's the end of the film. So it's a film about zombies, but there's a whole lot more going on than zombies in this movie. Think about 1968, the year that rocked the world. Think about those iconic images of 1968. You know, the helicopters bringing troops in. Well, there's a helicopter that brings in the police and the vigilantes at the end of the movie. Think of that just stunning picture of the German shepherds attacking protesters. There's the same German shepherds going after the zombies in Night of the Living Dead. Think about the hate crimes and the senseless murders, one after another in the real world. And you have the exact same thing happening in this movie, coming out in 1968 as well, with the senseless murder of Ben. So here's your hero, and when they haul him away, they actually are meat hooks that they're using. This is a movie about zombies? Who are the zombies again? Questions need to be asked. So 10 years later, Romero does his second of many zombie movies, Dawn of the Dead is fantastic. I saw this as a teenager. Instead of holing up in a farmhouse, they hole up in a mall. So imagine, you get rid of the zombies and you have a whole mall to yourself, all that mall stuff. And this is during the heyday of mallness in America, right? The late 70s and the 80s. It's fantastic. When I saw the movie, I thought, this is great. What could go wrong? Well, damn it, zombies get in. And that's the bikers, but that's another story. The zombies get in. These are flesh-eating zombies. You can tell because of the zombie handshake. What's interesting about these zombies, though, is that they keep coming back, and there are these clips of them fumbling through clothing racks. And one of the characters says to another, why do they keep coming back here? And the other one says, completely seriously, it must be some basic instinct. This place must have been very important to them when they were alive. So the film is just an unrelenting attack on American mall capitalism. You can read great scholarly articles on it if you want. Sometimes a picture is worth 1,000 words in terms of what the movie means to us who are dealing with Black Friday. So that only catches you up to 1978. We still have 37 more years of zombie films. Don't have enough time, but I hope you'll watch some of them, and maybe you'll watch them a little differently now. Maybe you'll see Resident Evil as about more than just zombies. Maybe it's about corporate greed. Maybe it's about technology gone wild. Maybe the T virus is a representation of our anxiety about vaccinations. Less obvious, or rather more obvious films like Ebola Zombies. This one's interesting. This just came out a few weeks ago. It was originally called SARS Zombies, but they changed the name, clearly expressing our anxieties. Now you could watch World War Z and understand that it's clearly about zombies, but isn't it at least as much about fears of terrorism and the breakdown of society and the dissolution of civilization, and in particular, the vulnerabilities of being part of an interdependent global community? And the great thing about zombie movies is how they've grown over 80 years. Now we have zombie comedies, or zomedies, if you will. We have mockumentaries, we have zombie TV series, we even have a zombie love story. The great thing about the zombie apocalypse as a metaphor is that it's so versatile. It can mean anything. So your idea of what a zombie apocalypse means may not be my idea of what an apocalypse means, but that's what gives the metaphor so much power. So TED Talks are supposed to present ideas worth spreading, and maybe one idea worth spreading is that you should all run out and watch zombie movies. Actually, you should, except for when they're really bad, they're really good. But the real idea worth spreading is that the insights you have to dig around for are the most rewarding, and that when you turn to wonder and when you ask why not, you can inspire your imagination and you can kindle your creativity, and when you open yourself up to this way of thinking, the world just becomes such a more marvelous place than it was before. And it's a world where even zombies can be profound if you're prepared to use your